Good morning and welcome to today's FS Club webinar. We've got a fascinating subject ahead of us, the metaverse and insurance. Pixel perfect. And we're going to explore what is the current state of a much hyped and very recently hyped supposed brand new technology. Now, you'll know me, I'm Michael Mainelli. I'm one of the directors of Zien, and it really is a privilege to be able to introduce so many of these FS Club webinars. And I can only do so thanks to our many sponsors, but I'll come to that in a moment. What we want to cover today in 45 minutes is quite tight. I'm going to make a few opening remarks about a report that Simon Mills and I wrote together with the sponsorship of Alistair Milne of Tech NGI. And Professor Milne will be speaking about Tech NGI and what his interests are in this space. Simon will be going through the main body of the report itself, and then we will have a question and answer session. A few points of housekeeping, if I may. Yes, this is being recorded. Yes, the slides will be available, and we are having a Q&A session, so please do type your questions into the chat room here on the GoToWebinar facility. Please don't text, email, WhatsApp me, because I'm here with you at the moment, as are Alistair and Simon. But we do look forward to a fairly vibrant discussion. Now, I would just like, I wouldn't normally do this, but I'd like to make an opening remark because I am co-author of this report. The meta what? The metaverse? Where did this come from? Well, it actually comes from a really interesting book written in 1992 by a good acquaintance of mine, actually, Neil Stevenson, in Snow Crash. And this quote here, so Hero's not actually here at all. He's in a computer-generated universe that his computer is drawing onto his goggles and pumping into his earphones. In the lingo, this imaginary place is known as the metaverse. Hero spends a lot of time in the metaverse. It beats the shit out of you, store it, which was in this dystopian model, real life. Now, the next slide here gives you a flavor of the fact that this is new and it's not new. So Neil wrote that, as I said, in 1992, but we at Zien, in conjunction with a number of other players, and interestingly an insurer, Royal Sun Alliance, as well as the London Stock Exchange, Barclays, and a whole host of other folk, put together in 1997 and 98 something called the Financial Laboratory. And what we were trying to do then was to visualize risk, the abstracts of risk, and we made some progress in it. But we were also impeded by the technology at the time, which was slow, had very high latency. In other words, it was inducing nausea, and it was also a little bit complicated and clunky for people to run. And then suddenly, on the 28th of October last year, Mark Zuckerberg announces that Facebook's holding company will become Meta, and recognizing, in his opinion, that the metaverse is the future of the web, and that's what the book talks about. But this isn't all that new. Firstly, compliments here to Professor Milne. He, in fact, commissioned our research on the 13th of October, so a couple of weeks before. So we weren't jumping on a Facebook bandwagon. And of course, we had a session last year with Jeremy Silver from the Digital Catapult on augmenting the augmenters, how the great Western metaverse will be built, when Jeremy was trying to point out the relevance of it. Now, this next slide gives you a flavor as well, I think, of why I think this is important to our sponsors. If this really is the brave new future, then all of our sponsors in technology, economics, and finance will be affected. And with that, if I may, I'd like to hand over to Professor Milne for some remarks on the report, but also on what this means to Tech NGI, and in fact, a little bit, Alistair, for the audience, what is Tech NGI? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Well, it's been a pleasure to work with you and see the output of this report. But first, let me say a bit about our project at Loughborough University. So we've been spending much of the past 3 years looking at artificial intelligence and its implications for the insurance industry, both retail insurance and for specialized in insurance as well. I think our position in the School of Business, where I'm situated, we want to encourage greater engagement between the research world and the industry on all aspects of financial technology. But I think our particular contribution is examining the kind of the business context for what is a a continuing revolution in technology affecting all aspects of financial services. So we've focused on AI, but it's really everything that's being touched. And I think what we'd always argue, it's a consistent theme through much of our work, is that the technology per se, you need the skilled data scientists, you need the software to back up what you're doing, but it's actually making that work within the organizational and business context is critical. And I think also as university researchers with a degree of independence, we can try and play a bit of a role in sorting out some of the hype, because there's always a lot of overstatement as well as profound insights, and sorting out the difference between the two is a continuing challenge for everyone. So we're expecting to be pretty active in this space for the years ahead, even if the specific project comes to an end, as it is fairly shortly. And now in terms of the metaverse and insurance paper, when we first discussed, we really wanted Yen to do something which kind of shone a light on the road ahead for both for ourselves as researchers and for the insurance industry in terms of where is technology taking us next. And I have to say, my first thought when Michael suggested the metaverse, I was a little bit on the skeptical side. The metaverse, really? But now I've had the chance to read what Simon and Michael have put together, I realize their instincts were absolutely right. And again, it's all a matter of sorting out the reality from the kind of often somewhat simplified visions. You need visions to sell, but you need to get down to the nitty-gritty to understand what's really important and what isn't. And I'm now persuaded that there is a lot important here, which insurers across the industry, whether it's a retail or corporate focus, whether it's brokers, underwriters, or reinsurance, all ought to be paying attention. So that's my take on the paper, and I'm looking very much forward to Simon's presentation.
Well, thank you, Alistair. Just before we get cracking, there's a quick poll for the audience out there. We've got quite a few people online, and I thought it'd be very good to just get a quick sample of how do they feel at the moment before Simon presents. Is the metaverse all hype and no work? Do you agree it's all hype, can't tell, or do you disagree? It's actually pretty darn serious. So is the metaverse hype? And we've got well over half the audience have voted. We'll just spend another few seconds waiting for the stragglers to come in. Alistair, our audience tends to be pretty quick and opinionated, which is good.
Yeah.
And here we go. I'm just about to shut it and share it. Well, Simon, 60% of the audience, nearly 2/3, are can't tell, so it's over to you. And a third of the audience would broadly disagree, i.e. they think it's pretty serious. So there's a lot of people out there who have real interest in this. Simon, you have the floor.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. My aim this morning is to introduce our new report, The Metaverse and the Insurance Industry Pixel Perfect, which we believe is going to arm you with an understanding of what the metaverse is, what its potential applications are, and specifically how its wide-scale adoption may actually impact upon the insurance sector. Slide, please. So what exactly is the metaverse? Well, it's been a staple of science fiction since the 1980s. Gibson, Stevenson, and Stross have all written about it, and it's been a common Hollywood trope as well. I'm sure that a lot of you will have seen The Matrix. Now, the common theme linking all of these stories is the metaverse is a persistent shared space combining virtual reality, augmented reality, and the internet. But art imitates life, and the fact is that the metaverse has already been with us for some time. Let me explain. Next slide, please. Those of you with children will no doubt have heard of Fortnite. Fortnite is a 3D online multiplayer game set on a virtual island where gangs of children run around shooting at each other. It has got 350 million users worldwide. Now, last year, the singer Ariana Grande followed in the footsteps of a number of other performers by hosting a live concert using Fortnite as her platform. And it's estimated the concert was attended by over 12 million individuals, with millions more watching recordings after the event. Now, These events are different from television broadcasts, as the attendees actually view them through the eyes of an avatar. And for those with the right equipment, and we'll come to this later, it's like being present at a live gig. Despite Fortnite being free to access, the event is estimated to have earned the singer over $20 million in merchandising sales. And bear in mind that this was earned from virtual merchandise, so it's digital skins for avatars rather than real t-shirts. So to reiterate, the metaverse is real, it's with us now, and people are actually making money out of it. Next slide, please. Fundamentally, the metaverse is an alternate space for social commerce, and some people are actually touting it as the successor to the internet, which is why it's sometimes referred to as Internet 4. Now, Internet 1 was slow. I'm sure that many of you can remember dial-up modems and waiting a minute or so for a single page to download. It was also static. You connected your desktop computer to your telephone line. But limited as it was enough to trigger the dot-com boom. Amazon and eBay were founded in 1995, Netflix in 1997, though at the time with Netflix, it was a way of renting DVDs online. Internet 2 introduced broadband and was a little brisker. It allowed media streaming. It also gave limited mobility to devices through Wi-Fi. Internet 3 was ushered in with the launch of the Apple iPhone in 2007. Initially, bandwidth was low, but 3G and 4G followed, and the mobile device as a means of accessing the internet became ubiquitous. Now, Internet 4 uses new technologies such as 5G and cloud computing to free handheld and desktop devices from the constraints of processing speed and storage to vastly boost their capability. And that's actually what's making the metaverse possible. Next slide, please. However, before you start gearing up for the next dot-com boom, this particular patch of magic beans does come with a few caveats, the most important of which is beware parallels between the growth of the metaverse and the growth of the World Wide Web. The first stumbling block is actually the nature of the metaverse as it currently exists. The internet was established as a not-for-profit endeavor arising initially from the defense sector. It was subsequently picked up by academic institutions as a means of collaboration, and the World Wide Web itself was created by Sir Tim Berners-Lee in an act of altruism. By releasing the code which created it for free, Berners-Lee ensured that unfettered innovation was unchained. The gates were thrown open to hobbyists and commercial entities alike, allowing the WWW to grow exponentially and find an audience of billions. By contrast, the metaverse as it currently exists is not a universal construct, but a series of walled gardens, closed ecosystems in which all the operations are controlled. Innovation must be licensed, activities are closely monitored, and rent may even be sought from both users and content providers. It's actually in the interests of ecosystem operators to discourage users from looking elsewhere. So the very principle that lies at the heart of the web, connectivity, is absent. Now, the second issue is that the innovations which make the metaverse possible restrict access. Without high bandwidth, low latency, and high stability, you're sunk. And these are already significant issues for some internet users, particularly in developing nations and remote rural areas. The third issue is that of functionality versus aesthetics. Crisp 3D graphics, Dolby surround sound, and lifelike avatars may be important for video games and music events, but they're a lot less important for other applications. In this respect, it's likely that rather than replacing the World Wide Web, the metaverse is going to sit alongside it, with some transactions such as online banking or accessing news feeds being a lot more suited to the former. Now, the final issue is that of casual access. Currently, the internet can be accessed by a range of devices, from mobile phones to desktop computers, from a range of locations, from the office or bedroom to bus stops or cafes. But it's simply, you can pull out your mobile and read the news feeds whilst waiting for a friend. For the full metaverse experience, you need a VR headset and haptic gloves, and these are bulky and expensive. They can cause motion sickness for some users, and they can only be used in a safe environment. Obviously, one of the strengths of the World Wide Web is its accessibility to people on the move. But remember, television didn't result in the death of radio. Radio is something you can listen to while doing something else. So, given these constraints, what use might the metaverse actually be? Next slide, please. Well, in and of themselves, these issues are going to be overcome. Service providers will be forced to fling over the gates of their walled gardens or lose customers. Connectivity is going to improve, and the clunky tech needed to access the metaverse is going to become smaller, cheaper, and better. And of course, specific uses are going to emerge. Next slide, please. I've already mentioned entertainment. Aside from music events, new forms of media may well emerge, such as interactive live plays or virtual tours of art galleries and museums. E-commerce in the metaverse is beginning to accelerate. Sotheby's has actually opened a branch in the metaverse in response to interest in the sale of non-fungible tokens. And sites such as Decentraland are even offering virtual real estate. Now, business meetings are an obvious application, and Microsoft and several other organizations are exploring next generation VR and telepresence technologies. And then finally, there are specialist applications. These can include advanced modeling and simulation, which can assist with engineering or loss adjustments, disaster management or maintenance. And a great deal of investment is taking place in this particular field. You're no doubt aware of Facebook's rebranding, which we've mentioned, but away from the headlines, there are a myriad of organizations involved in this space, and we cover a range of the leading players in the report. Now, all of this has got several implications for businesses wishing to use the metaverse. Firstly, connectivity, because companies that use the metaverse will find their interactions both with customers and other services and products online will increase. Secondly, it's likely to change notions of space and distance, allowing a deeper understanding of connections between entities in the virtual and the physical realm. And finally, the semblance of quality is going to be king. The look, motion, sound, texture, and feel of digital content may become more important than back-end functionality, and this may mean that safety and security considerations are going to take a back burner. Next slide, please. Now, at this point, I'd like to ask you a quick question. Looking beyond the hype, how big an impact do you think the metaverse is going to have? Now, we'll just wait a second for some results.
Yeah, that poll's up there now, Simon, and folks are answering it as we speak, and over half the audience have voted as ever. Just be a few more seconds here. I'll leave it up. Virtually all of the audience has voted, and just closing that, and I'll share those results. So an overwhelming 82% for an evolutionary impact.
Oh, that's fascinating. Well, that brings me neatly onto the implications of the metaverse for the insurance sector. Now, in the report, we look at the implications in two ways. We look at the opportunities and potential impacts to insurers' business models, and we also take a broad overview of the risk universe. So let's start with the business models side. Next slide, please. The report uses Porter's 5 forces model to unpack the challenges and opportunities, and we're going to take each of these in turn. So focusing in on competitive rivalry, it's possible to see that sales could be conducted through virtual insurance agencies. Aon Cook Life Insurance in Korea has already opened a virtual counselling window in the metaverse, and perhaps new services could be offered. The insurance professionals that we spoke to during the course of this research were particularly excited about the possibility of creating a virtual underwriting room for underwriter-broker collaboration. This could be used to virtually assess insurable assets and advise on risk mitigation. They also thought that similar technology could be used in claims for virtual damage assessment and loss adjustment post-event. Next slide, please. From the buyer's perspective, clients may wish to insure their metaverse assets, such as in-game currencies, virtual real estate, or NFTs. Specific products may actually need to be developed for metaverse applications, and several of the insurance professionals we consulted flagged up personal data and identity as a particular risk. Next slide, please. Insurers themselves may also wish to consider the services they seek from their suppliers. Leaving aside the obvious, such as ICT services, the scope should also encompass advertisers who are going to need to consider how to reach a new audience in a new medium, and of course legal services who are going to have to very carefully consider legal risks and litigation in a field with unclear jurisdictions and regulatory boundaries. Next slide, please. With respect to substitution, the metaverse does present some particular challenges to insurers. Claimants may find it difficult to prove financial loss when dealing with intangible assets such as non-fungible tokens, avatars, or digital real estate. In which jurisdiction was ownership registered, and where is the claim being made? How's the asset valued? Is it valued in sovereign currency or in cryptocurrency? Moreover, as the metaverse is a new creation, the risks to its users are not fully understood. AI, quantum computing, malware, and the physiological effects of VR are still emergent threats, so setting premiums is going to be difficult until the risks are fully understood. As a result, it's very likely that for corporate clients, alternative risk transfer vehicles are going to be used as substitutes for insurance. Next slide, please. Finally, there are going to be new entrants who are going to inevitably aim to disrupt the insurance sector in the metaverse. And these pretenders, whether offshoots of the online gambling sector or AI-based actuaries, are going to benefit from a lack of regulation and oversight. Platform operators themselves may even use their gatekeeper status to restrict competition or charge rent. Next slide, please. Now, I've already mentioned the issue of new risks associated with the metaverse, and these are covered in detail in the report, but I think it's probably worth briefly touching on three of them. First of all, the VR equipment itself brings with it a host of medical and psychological risks, from long-term inactivity to risk desensitization. Secondly, the metaverse is going to present a whole new attack surface for hackers, whether these are state-sponsored or private criminals. In addition to denial of service attacks, theft and vandalism, hackers may actually find ways of turning VR and haptic equipment against users to steal biometric data or even cause physical or neurological harm. And finally, we've got the metaverse's potential impacts on society itself. Recent revelation by whistleblowers that Facebook's algorithms pushed users into radicalism set a very disturbing precedence. Given the immersive nature of the metaverse, one can only shudder at the potential for catering to the vilest and basest instincts of its users. The use of VR and haptic technology could also allow platform operators to collect detailed biometric data on users, allowing unscrupulous operators to conduct behavioral tests, refine responses, and use the data to nudge real-world policy. As a senior risk manager pointed out, the truth is that the state is the ultimate manager of risk, but it is woefully unequipped to manage it, lacking both the technical expertise and the political will. Now, it may well be incumbent on cool heads within the insurance industry to counsel policymakers, lured by the siren song of this new technology, to beware the hidden rocks that may wreck the ship of state. Next slide, please. So, stepping away from this potential dystopia, what are our recommendations for insurers? Well, firstly, up your skills base. Invest in training and recruit more specialist expertise. Familiarize yourself with the concept of the metaverse, NFTs, and cryptocurrency. Identify potential risk factors and determine whether it's actually an area of business you wish to engage with. If you do, then examine the scope for offering new products and services. These could include managing the risks associated with an individual's personal data, managing the risks associated with digital assets, in particular, the issues regarding regulation and legal jurisdiction. You may also wish to consider offering alternative products by building a brand as a trusted risk barrier. This could include providing professional advice on risk mitigation rather than compensation for loss suffered. And this isn't actually traditional insurance, but it's more akin to the services offered by Norton and McAfee. Finally, you should be alert to the synergistic effects of new technologies such as the metaverse, which, although they might not actually be revolutionary in themselves, offer the potential for revolutionary change. Now, I hope you enjoy the report. I'd like to thank you very much for listening, and I'd like to hand you over to Michael for some conclusions.
Well, thank you very much, Simon. That was a good rapid run through. Folks, there is a 57-page report behind Simon's remarks and online and in the chat room. I would just like to conclude on one thing, and that's that people often say when you've written a report like this, yes, that's sweet, but what's the one big thing? And particularly with something like the metaverse, which is looking at such a breadth that Simon tried to cover in a very short period of time, what could you take away? Well, Simon and I tried to evaluate along the course of this the reality of the metaverse. And we saw, for example, that people are spending tremendous amounts on video games, which are largely moving into the metaverse. That's one way of estimating it. Another way is to note that there are a number of exchange-traded funds, ETFs, at least 6 or 7 of them out there trying to allow you to invest in Meta. You could look at it that way. But a third thing to look at is the land. This is about persistence. That's the core to the definition. It's about a persistent alternative reality, and therefore it is land. Now, Mark Twain, as you see here, said, buy land. They aren't making it anymore. And with an exciting nascent technology such as this, it is easy to overengage and to overpay. Now, you'll remember as well that there was a mini boom in a World Wide Web land grabs before, or .coms, or people staking out domain names in the late 1990s and early 2000s. But the metaverse is more complicated. We understand physical geography, but the metaverse removes those. And online geography is still primitive, and you can make the land. So the current www structure is that we rely largely on search engines. About 60% of traffic is directed that way. And that means that the World Wide Web is flat. I hop from place to place. You go to Google to get a claims adjuster, then you go to Google to get an actuary. You have little idea of the online geography of either the claim adjusters or the actuaries' geographical relationship with you, let alone other relationships that might talk about being proximate business-wise. But in the metaverse, there are many geographies ranging from the national, British, French, American, but there are business geographies, regulatory geographies, investment scale geographies, consumer geographies. And these simulated proximities can relate to different variables. They can differ by scale. So imagine a metaverse subsector of reinsurance, where market capitalization increases with longitude, while turnover increases with latitude. How do you set out your stall there? And people will be striving to have the most attractive metaverse spaces. You saw some of those lovely photos, to the point where everyone is going to be very, very stretched. Now, this will be competitive, but this is one of the underlying difficulties in the metaverse. It's not really one thing. It's a joining up of a variety of different neighborhoods. And if you don't like the neighborhood, you can make a new one. And we might think of these numerous geographies as zones or ghettos or alleys. An insurer may be on Insurance Alley for sure, but may also need to be on Risk Management Alley, might need to be on French Finance Alley, Balance Sheet Alley, FinTech Innovation Alley, and numerous alleys besides. As I said, the closest analog so far has been the .com days, but this is going to be an order or two of magnitude more expensive and more complicated than deciding, do you need a .com, .co.uk, .net, .biz, .tokyo or something. The metaverse is crinkly, not flat, and insurers will need to develop their thinking and strategies for staking out these claims as they move forward. So I'll conclude there with us talking, and it's now very, very much over to you, the audience, for your thoughts, comments, and questions. And if I could, I would like to open, if I may, with a comment from John Spain. I think I'll direct this towards you, Simon, but can one trust Meta or Facebook to provide a safe environment? Really?
I think that one of the problems which we discuss within the report is that There is a suspicion that that Facebook is running into the metaverse to run away from some of the problems that have pursued it on the World Wide Web. These issues of radicalization, of fake news, etc. The fact is, without a fundamental appraisal of the services that they're offering, without a fundamental appraisal of how they're using the data they're collecting on their users, these issues are going to pursue them into the metaverse. I alluded to the issues there will be to pandering to the worst and most base instincts of mankind. With the World Wide Web, it was a matter of moments before pornography started being posted up there. You can imagine how much worse it could be on the metaverse. So unless these issues are properly addressed at the start by the platform operators meaningfully, no, we cannot trust any of them.
Thank you. Question for you, Alistair, and it comes from Marl Simpson. Financial services and insurance have been traditionally siloed. We are starting to see a move to open banking, open insurance, open everything. Do you feel the metaverse presents an opportunity to break down these silos to present more holistic solutions? I know that's something you've been chatting about at Tech NGI.
Oh, that's been a big theme of our work. Absolutely. I guess my first instinct is it's more and richer channels, and the critical thing there is to be for an insurance company is to be, and for competitors is to be available to work on all of them. I think the question of is it open banking? Remember how much open banking has been driven by regulators. Regulation is not always quick up to the mark, but I think regulators are going to start also seriously worrying about financial competition in the context of the metaverse. So, what's the regulatory perspective on all of this as well is going to be central. It actually, what that also suggests is, Simon, it's a great report, but actually there's a lot of questions still to be addressed going forward.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, on those questions, just a slight return to help a little bit. Sue Milton just wants to make sure she's got this right, Simon. The metaverse still relies on the internet. So is the difference that the metaverse is a closed, even if free, group offering 3D reality?
Yes, it's worth making a disambiguation. People conflate the words internet and World Wide Web, and the internet is the pipe work that connects servers around the world. The World Wide Web is the browser that sits on top of it that allows web pages to link up. So yes, the metaverse is reliant on the internet to work. It is an offshoot of the World Wide Web, if you will.
Thank you. Alistair, a couple of people would like you to speculate, if you don't mind, on, I think it's really about geopolitics and regulation. So Callum Graham asks, how will legislative jurisdictions currently moving towards caveat vendor, protecting the consumers, keep up with consumer protection in the metaverse? And Hugh Purser asks, regulators are going to have to work together internationally on a scale never seen before. Is that even realistic? And finally, Bob McDowell, how profound a constraint will geopolitical constraints impact the evolution of the products and services? So, regulators, geopolitics, and protecting consumers. Any thoughts on that?
There's a lot there. Let me concentrate on the consumer protection, because I think I've got a clear view, I think, on that. Actually, I was reflecting as Simon was talking how much of this actually relates to the other part of my professional responsibilities, which is the teaching side. Because what we're seeing in the universities is, a new generation of students coming through who are, I would say, they're Generation Meta rather than Generation Z. Actually persuading them to leave the comfort of their rooms and come to a lecture is quite a challenge, and of course that's been exacerbated by the pandemic. So I think all consumer protection is going to have to evolve to take on, look, sending people, we're already in a problematic situation where sending people an unreadable set of terms and conditions and all the small print, that just doesn't cut it in terms of consumer protection, because it's got to be an informed decision. The fact that you can point out and said, well, you were told all these pitfalls and you didn't pay attention, that's no longer going to be a protection for firms going forward. And I think that's only going to be exacerbated by the metaverse, because even if you try and send them a very clearly written email, how do we know they've really read and understood it? It's kind of a different way of interacting with, especially on the retail side.
Absolutely.
In terms of general, the general geopolitical, gosh, I think I could be taking up the rest of the seminar and a good deal more to try and deal with that. I think I can only reflect on, other work I've done on crypto and NFTs. We have a major problem with coordinating regulation in the crypto world already. So I can certainly see that arising in spades with the metaverse.
And I was just going to add to that the issue of personal data is it is magnified when it comes to the metaverse. If you are using virtual reality equipment, you are literally strapping a polygraph to your face. So the platform operators can collect detailed information on your responses to what you're looking at. They are you are giving Meta the keys to your soul, if you like.
Okay. Well, we got a few comments I'd just like to throw in from the audience. Joe Pinder, a little skeptical. I think he says it seems that the metaverse is an updated virtual reality version of Second Life. If you're in the entertainment, gaming, or business comms area, then take note. There are opportunities. Otherwise, so interesting there. I think we also have a comment here from James Say. Does the price volatility of crypto assets cause any concerns, particularly in this space? And in fact, Yates Buckley makes a similar point. Again, he questions the problems with underlying dependence on volatile values of crypto. So it seems that there are many layers of risk. So a lot of issues there. But I'd like to turn, Simon, this is probably for you. Lieve Loet makes, I think, an excellent point here. Do we have any idea how much energy does the metaverse need compared to the World Wide Web? Is it ESG compliant?
No. The short answer, it is tremendously energy intensive. There are two elements to it. First of all, the actual technology itself, even though you're doing cloud computing, unless those cloud computer servers are powered by renewables, and I know that there are issues at the moment with both the Netherlands and Iceland complaining that all their renewable resources are being sucked up by Google's servers. Leaving that aside, the whole field of NFTs and cryptocurrency is a minefield. Certainly with regards to Bitcoin mining uses enormous quantities of energy. If you are basing your fungibility within the metaverse on cryptocurrencies, there is a huge environmental impact which needs addressing.
Yeah, well, I might argue the opposite, that perhaps the metaverse might reduce, for example, air travel if it was there. So I think there's a lot to be there, but I think the short answer to Lieve's question is we don't know, but it's likely to consume more, that's for sure, with all that extra kit. And Marl Simpson again, virtual underwriting and remote claims adjustments as ideas have been around since the 1990s in various forms. Actually, Marl, I certainly came across them in the 80s, and it may be helpful to illustrate how the metaverse will be different to, for example, Lloyd's recent foray to a virtual underwriting room. Simon, any thoughts there on virtual underwriting and remote claims adjustments?
Well, I think that, as the technology advances and the modeling becomes more refined and lifelike in the metaverse, it is possible to, for example, model a dam to fly out, look at pluvial and fluvial flows, model where the potential damage of any breach might be, and assist you in actually setting your premiums in that way. So I think it's an issue of refining models, and certainly there is some really exciting developments with firms such as Nvidia, who are already being used by BMW and some other car manufacturers to remodel factories in the metaverse, so that they can see how to run them most efficiently in the real world. I think, you know, it's evolutionary. It is going to be just another tool.
If I can add a little to that, Michael. So I think some points in your report, but it could maybe even be highlighted more. So a kind of hot topic across much of the engineering faculty I engage with here at Loughborough is the notion of a digital twin. So whether it's civil and construction or manufacturing or whatever, that's a metaverse application. That's about developing something which they can engage with virtually to solve real world problems. So I think that's the way I would see the way forward for insurance and remote and automate virtual underwriting and loss adjustment.
Well, that's a good time for me to pause briefly. I'm going to launch another poll in a moment, and it's going to be kind of seeing how the audience has shifted, if at all, on the idea of is it all hype and no work. But while that's launching, and I'll let them talk to it, to answer it. Really a question for you, I think, Alistair, and it's from Nick Birtles. You know, given this bit about digital twins, et cetera, how long do you think it will take for this to develop into a viable environment? You know, and which areas apart from games will be the early adopters?
Look, again, it's difficult to tell. My instinct, I mean, this is just an opinion, is that this is not going to be universal in quite the way the web is, but rather there will be a series of applications, and how proprietary they are, whether they're, you know, whether it's owned by Facebook. I kind of wouldn't be totally comfortable by that, but it'll be where we enter this particular metaverse world. So it's a universe with many with many solar systems within it, and we enter that particular solar system to deal with particular problems and challenges. So I can see some of that emerging quite quickly, but full development, I think, is going to be a period of decades.
Okay. Well, our audience took a little bit more time to answer that poll than before, so obviously they're thinking about it. I'm just going to close that poll and share the results now. And what we can see here is actually the audience really broadly agree, can't tell, and broadly disagree. So it's pretty much the same as it was when we started, I think, which is an interesting point. Well, what I'm going to come back to then is one final question for both of you, and it's for both of you. I think that as we look at this land grab idea, there are a lot of comments in here about geopolitics and geography. Bob McDowell isn't here. You know, I assume one walled garden could acquire another walled garden. You know, will there be takeover constraints? So do you see this ultimately as unifying into Stevenson's vision of at least everything is completely interconnected, or do you see this as some very isolated, well, it's terrible to say isolated universes, but I think you get the drift. Alistair, your thoughts on that?
They answered that with my last contribution. So clearly there's going to be some commonalities. So and I'm not sure I'm going to be too keen myself on strapping on the headgear. It's not a fashion statement. I just think it'd irritate me. But to be able to use the equipment I'm already familiar with to get a much more immersive experience, I think would be very attractive. Whether it's in teaching, whether it's in exploring, you know, particular research challenges with, say, with engineering colleagues. So I see some. You know, we're a long way yet from developing standards for the metaverse, because I don't think we've even worked out what are the key technological kind of facilitators. But I think when we get there, then we will be looking for as much commonality as possible. But the applications, to my mind, will continue to be somewhat specific.
I tend to agree. I think that there will be interlinking in particular use cases. So engineering metaverse I will link together, entertainment universe I will link together, but perhaps never the twain shall meet.
Okay. Well, and my concluding remark would be that I think it is coming, and I believe it will never be completely unified. It is going to be the battleground. However, to answer the question, the next bit is actually already here. There's been an enormous move, and I found this doing this research over the last few months. Education, training, these are the places where it is picking up. Small defined areas, and there are genuine, real applications out there where people are doing it. It's just that we haven't really quite seen it and pulled it together. Anyway, it's been a great discussion. Thank you so much, both of you. Just a few concluding thanks, if I may. Firstly, to our sponsors for allowing us to range widely and freely. Secondly, thanks to all of the people who commented and participated in the polls. Your questions and your comments will be sent on to both Alistair and Simon, who may wish to reply. But we really do appreciate you being with us today and helping. A reminder that we do have some forthcoming events. Next week, we're going to be looking at the future of gig working, as well as having the ever-present and wonderful David Doyle giving us our annual update on EU financial services legislation. As ever, go to the website. But my most sincere thanks are really very, very much to our sponsor, Alistair Milne, and to my co-author, Simon Mills. And we hope that you've enjoyed today. Thank you.